Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Ashley Duell here from Dual Dev LLC. We are going to kick off our live session for this evening. I'm joined by Natasha Velez. Natasha, you want to introduce yourself or say
Hey
hi?
everybody, welcome to our second episode of GovConHacks. Super excited about today's episode.
Yes, me too. We had a lot of great questions submitted by members of the group. I was wanting to know, do you want to talk about that for a moment in case anyone's watching who is not a member of the group yet?
Yeah, absolutely. You and I both have federal government contracting groups on Facebook. And I submitted some questions, just essentially asking the group, what are their pain points right now? And so a lot of people answered. I had 94 comments in regards to how do you get started? How do you become a subcontractor? How do you hire? How do you even know who key personnel is? What's a mentor, protege program? I mean, the questions were endless. So I think it'd be really good to start honing in on some of those questions and helping those folks out.
Yes, ma'am. Let's go ahead and get to the list. So I think the best way to do this is we'll go ahead and just dive right in. There are some questions that are kind of similar in scope, so I'll try to group those together as best I can. Um, the one of the last questions actually submitted is one of the first ones I want to talk about. It is, do you have to pay for your SAM registration? You do not have to pay for your SAM. SAM.gov is monetarily free. However, it will cost you some time. And then there is a cost associated perhaps with submitting your admin letter for the notary fee. Aside from that, you can do it on your own without a fee. There are third parties that provide this as a service. Some of them have some interesting marketing tactics. You might have seen the emails jumping in your spam folder telling you that you're missing this or you're missing that, or there's something wrong with your DSBS profile. Those typically are third-party emails, so be sure to check the sender.
Yeah, I think I've seen like people charge anywhere from like 2,000 to 5,000 just to like renew your SAM. And I'm like, you could do that for free. A
They
good
do
Google
these,
search.
yeah, they do these 5-year contracts, and they'll charge you
Mhm.
$600 a registration for 5 years and you save 10% off of that. And I mean, at the end of the day, Sam does change so frequently that, in some cases, depending on what your time is worth, it might make sense to hire someone, but, that shouldn't necessarily be all that they do, if that makes sense. We can get into more detail on that later.
Mhm.
Um, but there were some other questions related to Sam. So give me a second here. Let's pull those up. All right. Another one is how to get started just after your SAM and UEI is obtained. You want to take that one, Natasha?
Yeah, that one, I think we were discussing that earlier. It's really about a process. So I know we all hear different variations how to get started, but ultimately it's all really the same despite your industry. There is one method, and then of course it branches off based on the industry. But getting started after you've gotten your UEI and you've gotten your SAM really is about now it's time to build your business, right? So it's about creating that pipeline, what's out there. And you're not going to be able to find out what's out there until you start searching. So it really is about getting on SAM.gov, but it's not the only place. That's federal. There's plenty of local sites, state sites, your procurement sites for your county, city, state, all that, that you can find bids and open solicitations under the government tab in that site. So I like to create a pipeline and I like to put in about 5 seconds of opportunities that I think might be, good for me in my business. So creating a pipeline, looking at those opportunities, really sourcing and getting an idea of what's out there for you and your business and what you would like to work on. What's really nice about this industry is In a commercial world, you are trying to attract a client, trying to attract the customer to want your business. Here in the federal space, the client is coming to you posted across multiple, websites stating this is the work we need. No brainer. So it makes it quite easy. And in many cases, they'll tell you who they've worked with and what their budget is and the estimated value and so on and so forth. So a lot of research, a lot of Googling, creating a pipeline, getting an idea of the budget, if it's something that you can do. And then I think the second thing I would say is USAspending.gov.
Oh,
Um,
that's my best friend.
oh, it's so good. It's so good. You have to play on it. You can find primes, subs. You can find out what contracts they've won, how much they've won. You can
The
find out,
offers were received.
yeah, you can find out who's buying what you sell and how much they spend on it and what they're buying, what contracts are out there. I mean, if you play with it long enough, you'll find everything that you need to know to at least get you started. But I think the key is education, learning, playing around, and finding out as much information as you can so that you feel comfortable enough to execute.
I agree. And this is actually a really good segue into a similar question, or I guess it's a different question, but the answer is similar. What is the best way to become a subcontractor? And since we're on USA spending, it's a great time to interject this question because USA spending is, the free way to find just about anything you'll need to get started. There is also a question in here related to I don't have a business. I don't even know what I want to sell to the government. So we're going to address those simultaneously for a moment. Now, this does warrant a how-to video. So if you're not yet subscribing to our GovConHacks YouTube channel, please do. It's at GovConHacks, and I will post some how-to videos of screen share. That way I can walk you through the steps on how to look at this so that you know what you're seeing, etc. But
Mhm.
the answer essentially to both of those questions is through research, right? In order to be a subcontractor, you have to know who the primes are. And then once you identify who the primes are, it's not normal to say that all of them are going to want to work with you, right? So what you need to do is you need to figure out which primes your services or your experience complement well. That could be, based on gaps. For example, if I have a relationship with DOE and I see a targeted prime that has a relationship with USAID and Department of State, but what they're missing is DOE, I have something I bring to the table in that case. So I'm probably going to lead with that. Um, it's not until after you've done your homework that you can have some of the intelligent conversations with these primes. And keep in mind that you're just one of 100. So setting yourself, or hundreds rather, setting yourself apart is really important. Um, Jumping in their inbox talking about how you're a woman-owned small business or a veteran-owned small business, and leading with that, you're basically telling them that you see that your value is in your set aside and your value is in your business. Now, on the same sort of parallel to that, if you don't know what you're selling yet, the way that I have guided folks in the past is sort of figuring out where they fit best in the market is again starts with market research. You have to know what the government buys because a lot of what's available on the commercial side, they buy, but they might buy it a different way, or you might have to offer it a different way or price it a different way. These are all things that you're going to need to know before you even submit a proposal. Um, expecting obviously to win, whether it's best value, LPTA matters less. You do have to have a good understanding of your market. And that's what essentially USA spending will offer to you. Granted, you spend some time in there playing with the tool.
Mhm.
And let's see, we have how to write a professional bidding proposal.
Mhm.
Now, Natasha is the proposal manager of the two of us, so I'll let her take this one.
Oh, so I get that a lot. Um, it depends. So It depends on if it's a source of sought, if it's an RFQ, a solicitation, I mean, IDIQ, I mean, I can go on. But ultimately, for this particular question, you want to have kind of a basis, right? So you kind of think of it as like a business plan. Your business plan is your proposal of how you're going to execute and do the work if given the opportunity, right? So cover letter, right? Table of contents, an executive summary of your company. You know, when were you founded? Who are you? What makes you who you are? Government likes it if you make it really nice, sweet, and easy. UEI, cage code, EIN number, if you have any DBAs, address, all that good stuff. And then we go into a little bit about your company information. So it's kind of like your executive summary about all of your company and specifically why you particularly can, have core capabilities that would perform this work the best out of everyone else. What are your differentiators essentially? And then that kind of leads into your technical approach. If given the opportunity, how are you going to do the work? Are there deliverables, schedules? Is there, management plan, staffing plans? You need to hire people. Do you have key personnel? For instance, a project manager who's going to manage this. Do you have a resume for that person? What makes that person really good in this particular field to be able to perform this particular contract? And then we go into a pricing volume, which is this is what we're going to price. This is why. You could even break it down by labor categories or by materials, quantity, how you see fit. But ultimately, there are some do's and don'ts, right? You want to make it short and sweet. You want to be super responsive. So everything that the customer states in that solicitation, you want to be able to read it and answer to it. Um, and then you want to be able to price it according. So usually it's your technical approach and then your pricing that are the two most, important, factors in your proposal. But ultimately, I always tell people to read, learn, figure out how to write a proposal, a good one. Even if you pay someone to do one proposal, and then look at that proposal, a really good one, and then make it a point to teach yourself how to do it the same way. Or even if you have yourself a really good template to utilize. I know Federal Access gives really good templates. There's a couple of places that give really good proposal templates for federal, and it doesn't take a whole lot to do it. It's just basic technical writing, honestly. I know a lot of people are using ChatGPT too. Obviously, just don't just do ChatGPT, like fluff it out.
Yeah, you can't just submit a proposal and yours end up looking exactly like everybody else's who
Yeah.
used
I hear
ChatGPT.
so many people say it, like, I'm just going to ChatGPT, and I'm like, everybody's got the same answer then.
It's a huge time saver when it comes to content, but if you're using ChatGPT for your proposals, it's all in the prompt, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're giving the necessary information on what to include, like differentiators,
Hmm.
your output can't possibly be the same as someone else's.
Right.
So, we could spend an entire course on
I think we
differentiating.
will. I think at some
We
point
might. We're gonna have to do that.
we'll go into the course. I'm always down for teaching someone how to do a proposal.
Right.
Uh, But ultimately, just think of it as if the customer was in front of you and asked you, how are you going to perform this work and how much are you going to charge me? What would you say? And put that on paper, please, in the most professional way possible.
Once you and part of growing in government contracting, since we're on proposals, I will say once you do win that first award, and this is particularly important for those of you in the service space, right? Not necessarily as important for something that's lowest price, like a product, but more so for those of you that are competing in best value scenarios.
Right.
When you get a winning proposal, start building yourself a library of content. Because if you won with that content, I mean, what you're going to end up finding, granted you're bidding in the same industry and keeping your life easy, is repetitiveness, right? A lot of agencies are going to include the same clauses, the same requirements. Why should you have to reinvent the wheel every single time? If you
Yep.
have a database or repository of content, and I look at this similarly to the template, if you build your proposal template once, you never have to do it again. So, those of you who are submitting multiple proposals and you're starting from scratch each and every time, work smarter, not harder. Build your
Yeah.
template, copy your template, fill it in, rinse and repeat, pull from your library.
And be very conscientious of that, though. Because I have a million contracting officers who complain about seeing old solicitation numbers. Clean it in between submitting.
Yes, do make sure that you are being very cognizant that you're not putting old information in there. Absolutely. All right. Let's go ahead. So there's a similar question in here. And I mean, while it's a very long answer, I can certainly simplify this, and it's along the same lines as proposals, kind of. How to read a solicitation. Well, I mean, part of that is obvious, right? I mean, you read it. But if you're asking what the sections that you need to be most cognizant of in your qualification process, which I think is probably what you might have meant by that, it's going to be section L, section M, and your scope of work, right? Am I right about that? Am I leaving anything out?
No, it's about it. And make sure review the FAR regulations. I know it's boring, I know.
It
But
is.
there are moments where, you'll read a solicitation and I'm going to go back into being, a teenager. My mother used to always tell me if I didn't understand something, look it up. And I'm old, so it was read the dictionary, right? But I'm going to say the same thing for solicitations. If you don't understand something, look it up because remember that solicitation becomes a contract and that contract becomes a requirement that you may or may not know that you just agreed to.
Right.
So just look it up.
There is a lot of risk, and I have had contractors come to me after the fact when they've won an award, and they bring the solicitation to me and they say, "What does this mean?" And
Yeah,
it's, "Oh, oh, all right, like damage control."
dude.
And, that's okay for anybody who might be contemplating getting assistance with government contracting. The "oh crap" moment is not the time. You do it before the "oh crap" moment so that we can kind of help guide you to avoid those moments, right? Um, and that's pretty consistent across the board. If you ask for help once it's too late, sometimes we're not going to be able to, there's nothing anyone can really do to help. It's really going to be damage control. Um, and going back to using Chat GPT, if Chat GPT claims in its output that you have a quality control process that you do not have, and you win an award based on that requirement, I mean, the worst case scenario, you could get terminated for default,
Mhm.
and you might never get another contract again. So we always err on the side of caution. A lot of what you're going to find in the FAR stuff in the solicitation is a lot of boilerplate. And once you do this several times, you're even going to be able to identify areas where the government makes mistakes, right?
Mhm.
Make sure that you're reducing any ambiguities during the Q&A phase, or you won't get another chance. There, you know, if you don't identify during the Q&A and clarify, what does this mean? What does that mean? Can this, is that, then that's your moment. That's your moment to kind of say, hey, this is an error that you made. This shouldn't be in here, or this maybe should have, is this what you meant, kind of thing. That kind of actually is very similar to the lines of what are reps and certs.
Yeah.
So this question is kind of SAM, but kind of FAR too, because the answer is both. In the system for award management, when you register for your cage code, one of the sections you're going to have to complete is reps and certs, which is short for representations and certifications. And what it is your attestation to the FAR and DFARs if you opt into DoD contracting. And you'll have to answer those FAR questions. This also is you can print it out and it satisfies, is it section K? of the solicitation in most cases.
Yes.
So Section K will ask for your reps inserts. And if you have answered in SAM, vendor will provide with specific offers to the government. To any of those, you will have to manually answer them in your proposal response. That is something that folks tend to miss, especially those who pay third parties to do their SAM. They don't realize they said vendor will provide, then they don't provide, and then they end up with an oops.
Not
So
responsive.
non-responsive, that's right.
Hmm.
All right, we marked that one done, and this is an interesting one. I'd love to hear your take on it. I
Yeah,
want to start a group home or transitional living facility as a nonprofit. What type of contracts would I go after?
it's a good one. I've had a couple of those. And it really does depend. So you can take those any which way. They do have government contracts for that. It's more of state and local contracts. It's not federal. It's more like SLED, essentially. They have prison ones like transitional living. So, coming out of prison, going to, transitional home. They also have a lot of county and state homelessness and transitional living for teens. So there's and shelters, all that good stuff. So there are federal contracts and there are grants. And then, so that can that can be all they have. And then there's some counties that I've seen that will provide you even the home, as long as you fill it up with, the people that need it. And then, of course, provide the assistants, the social workers, and, facility living program management. So, I mean, there's a lot. I would still keep looking. Grants are always the best, right? Because who doesn't want free money in order to execute such an amazing endeavor? But there are a lot of opportunities within the federal prison space. Your local counties and states that are looking for what they call is the homelessness epidemic, that'll help you with housing. I would just push to be careful with that because it's a lot of risk, a lot of responsibility. Not that I wouldn't promote it, but I would just say make sure you're heavily insured because they have a lot of insurance aspects. And if the solicitation itself is not providing you a home, just make sure you have a home to provide those individuals, or you're not going to get any of the work. But it is a very huge need. So it's a good endeavor. I've seen a couple, and I think it's because the increase of homelessness has been pretty crazy lately. But not for
Yes,
nothing.
cost of living is crazy.
Yeah, there's even like affordable housing. Like the government will literally give you 0% interest loans and fast permits to create homes for people that are disabled, to create homes that are people that are homeless, on welfare, that are in Section 8, so that you can build these communities or homes for them, and then, essentially be a property manager and manage that property so that they can live there. Um, and the state, of course, pays for them to live there. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities for, the funding to help those in need.
This is the second time that SLED has come up. So SLED, for those of you who are new to the space, is state, local, and edu, right? So that includes your states, your counties, your cities. Natasha mentioned SLED contracting being a good use case for this. And I will say for any of you who are interested in government but lack past performance, SLED could be a great way to get your foot in the door and have something to show for the work that you provide because there's usually less competition in the SLED space. It's difficult enough to keep up with the federal spending. So the best resource that you can ask for to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of the SLED market is engage with your local Apex accelerator. There's one in every state. They provide free support. A lot of them provide free bid matching, free training. Um, Some of them will share Govology with their clients. So, not all are created equal. They have different needs and different requirements, but DoD funds them, right? And the best people to know about what's going on in the local climate are the people that are physically located in the local climate. If somebody wants me to evaluate, one of my clients wants me to evaluate, what's coming out of Florida, that's like a whole research endeavor because that's not something I currently have my finger on the pulse of. They want me to, I don't know what's going on in Pennsylvania. I don't live there anymore. So,
Mhm.
there's, I'm more federal. But go to your state procurement site, start there. All of the states receive federal funding. Most recently, what comes to mind is the infrastructure bill. That money, oh, excuse her, went down through the states, and the states awarded those contracts to rebuild the roads and bridges and whatnot. So don't discount the state and local work. It can be a great way to kind of get your foot in the door and start building that past performance for your company.
Yeah, I'll kind of just jump on that too. When it goes to education, there's also a lot of universities. I don't know that a lot of people know this, but universities have also a lot of state and local
Yeah,
funding. So, um, I've seen opportunities for like Texas University, Florida State University, all the universities. They also are on the sled track where you can bid on proposals to work with the universities and provide services as well. So that as well.
very much so. And let's see, I know there was one in here about funding.
Oh yeah. That's another one we get a lot. How to fund? Do you need to fund? Um, do I need money?
Yeah, having funding for a contract when it comes to paying subs and employees before you get paid. This is a great question. So I'm going to give you the official government answer, and then I'm going to give you the alternative answer, right?
Mhm.
So the official government answer is you should be financially stable enough and have a developed business to be able to foot the payroll, right? That's sort of what the expectation is. But what a lot of companies do when they're just starting out, and I've seen a few companies be successful in federal only. I had a client actually who literally refused to work commercially. He only wanted to do federal work, and he fought tooth and nail to get his way there, and he did it. But he didn't have all the capital to start until he got his first contract. So, one way would be, your grants. Another way would be SBA loans. Those tend to be pretty long in term length. If you don't have any business credit, it's going to be hard to get any loan of any kind, right? So if you haven't done so already, make sure you get yourself a DUNS number because while DUNS has nothing to do with the government contracting registration process anymore, they're still the keeper of your business credit. So, insurance companies, bonding, people are going to look into your DUNS and look at your financial stability. So a great thing to do would be to start now, get yourself a DUNS number, start reporting some positive payment history in case you ever do need a loan. The alternative way would be factoring companies. So this typically does not work necessarily as much to fund payroll as it does for those of you products suppliers, right? You need the manufacturer to get paid while your shipments en route to the government. So factoring companies tend to be very popular there. Any ideas or recommendations that you have?
Yeah, they have, and I think this is just because the service industry has gone increasingly popular when it comes to hiring and staff augmentation, essentially, right? So a lot of factoring companies now are kind of coming out of the woodworks and they're essentially like banks or they're departments or divisions of the bank that specifically focus on federal funding. And so what they do is they will purchase, and it doesn't matter whether it's materials or, labor, they will support you if you have a government contract. So they usually charge a percentage and it's their factoring fee, and they will buy your invoice essentially. The invoice to the government, they will buy it. And then they will give you a percentage of a loan based on receivables. So let's assume it's 80%. They'll give you 80% of your contract value so you can cover labor, you can cover materials and overhead and all that good stuff. Sweet deal. Government pays you for the work that you've done, doesn't come to you, it comes to the factoring company because they bought the invoice. The factoring company takes the 80% they lent you, they take their fee out of it, and then give you the remaining balance. So that's kind of how that goes. So they have a lot less risk because they have bought your invoice and they know that the government always pays. So they won't have an issue. And you sign a contract, so you're liable if they don't get paid for some magical reason. Um, but I've seen people like that have bankruptcy do factoring, and now they're just millionaires, $1 million companies just soaring away, So it's not a bad start if you don't have business credit. It's a good start, actually, I would think. Just don't stay on,
Yeah.
be very expensive.
And it's good to note here too. Well, there are some that are more reasonable than others. Some of them go on a sort of timeline basis.
Yeah,
If it's net 30, the percentage is cheaper. If
right.
it's net 45, the percentage goes up of their fee, right? You also have to work that fee into your pricing if you're going to use a factoring company. Um, so keeping that in mind, if you are on your first contract, and let's say the invoicing method is wide area workflow, and you make a mistake and you're waiting and waiting and trying again, and the time clock is ticking, you could be paying 7.5% by the time you actually get them paid back. So that does significantly affect your profit margin. Be comfortable with these government systems. That is the biggest favor that you can do for yourself. SAM, wide area workflow. We talked about USA spending today. USA spending is a lifeline. For those of you with the where do I start questions, go play with USA spending. Sit on your couch, have your laptop, and just put in some keyword searches. Don't always focus on a NAICS code. The NAICS code you think that is your NAICS code may or may not be the NAICS code that the government considers it to be. It may not be where they have room in their budget. So take all factors into consideration. Your goal and homework before next week is to understand who buys what you sell, because every one of those agencies does business a little bit differently. Pick three, your top three. Come back, let us know who your top three are in the comments of this episode. And we are out of time. Do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
I know this was a really good episode. I know we'll have more questions. I'll put them out there for people to ask away, and then we'll work on those next time. But I hope that you guys really do take some of this information and utilize it to help you build and grow. I know the goal is always stable revenue, and it takes work, and nobody can do that for you, no matter who you outsource it to. So just take this information, go with it, research, learn, and if you have any questions, Ashley and myself are happy to help offline as well.
Feel free to reach out anytime. I definitely agree. Everybody have a great week. Happy New Year. We
Happy
will
New
see you
Year.
back here, same time, same place. Be safe. There's a lot of weird drunk drivers on the road this weekend. Seriously, be safe.
Be careful, guys. Bye.
Bye, everyone.